By the time all of those costs were added on to the product, I mean, we made no money, essentially. But I got to say we were in road dwarfs, and that made me very happy. But that does not build a big business.
Welcome to the Think Splendid YouTube channel. My name is Lynn Stevens, and I'm the founder and CEO of Think Splendid, where we provide business strategy for luxury wedding and hospitality brands. In celebration of 15 years in business, I'm sitting down with 20 wedding industry leaders from around the world to discuss the realities of owning an event business in 2020. These splendid conversations are honest, candid, and authentically optimistic. In this episode, I chat with Christine Traulich, the co-founder of Red Bliss Design, a custom luxury wedding invitation company based in New Hampshire that she co-founded with her sister Dori. If you've ever received or sent an invitation in a silk box, you have Christine and Dori to thank for inventing them. Christine and I talk about staying relevant, shifting your mindset to a healthy place, what productivity in a pandemic really looks like, how the Neiman Marcus bankruptcy impacted her business, and how we each deal with copycats. Here's our conversation. Enjoy!
Yeah, so I started Red Bliss Design almost 20 years ago. And it came about because I was in high tech, and I had been in high tech for just over 10 years. And I loved working in small startup environments. I loved being, at the beginning of something great. I loved having my hands in all the different places and building something. And so this was back when, internet technologies and things, and everybody was going public, and being in technology was just, incredible. The thing is that you work yourself literally to the bone. I mean, I was putting in 80-hour work days, bouncing. I think I went between like 3 different startups. One went public, which was amazing. I was part of the IPO team. I had an incredible 10-year stretch. And then I ended up at a startup that was horrible, absolutely horrible. The environment was horrible. The culture was horrible. And basically what I tell people is that it took the worst job of my life to give me the best job of my life, because it literally drove me out of the industry. And I was so just in a bad place. And my husband said to me, you've been kind of toying with this idea of doing your own thing. And we had been married, I think, about a year at that point. And I had done my own wedding invitations, and they were very unusual. And people had always commented, you should do something like this for a living. And I'm like, you can't do something like that for a living. I mean, that's just crazy. But I got to a point where I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. And so I was so fortunate to have the support of my husband, who said, walk away. And I did. And I started Red Bliss out of my living room. At the time, it was going to be, fun cards for friends. And then it was like, oh, I'm going to design 6 things and put them on a website, and maybe people will buy them. And long story short, little by little, baby step by baby step, things started to turn around. It took 2 years to really, get any kind of foothold in the industry. It took 2 years to learn the industry, to understand how it worked, who the players were. I didn't know a single person when we started. And the person who really put us on the map is Jeffrey Selden. If you know Jeffrey Selden, he's with Marcia Selden Catering. And he had seen one of our invitation samples in his event planner's office. And he said, what is that? And lo and behold, we had a meeting. We totally hit it off. He decided to have us design his wedding invitations, which were very unusual. We did a silk box. That's when we, had kind of invented that whole category of silk boxes. Filled them with rose petals, sent them out to all of his...
Pause right there.
Yeah.
Because you just glossed over that. And I know you're originally from the Midwest, and you have that Midwestern Minnesota nice thing going on. But you did invent that category of
That's true.
The silk invitation boxes. You guys were the ones who did that first. And I think a lot of people who are in the business now just take for granted that those things always existed. And it's like, no, they're still your competitors. They're still here. Yes. So that's me giving you that little plug, because I know you just glossed over that and whatever, but that's a big deal and people should know about it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be more proud of that then. Okay. We designed a red silk invitation box filled with red rose petals for his wedding. He got married on Valentine's Day. And Jeffrey was really the first one in the industry to send it out to all of these fellow people and peers and colleagues in the industry. So it was really, that's how we kind of got on the map, because we were able to actually get one of our real authentic pieces into the hands of a lot of different people. So I credit him with, this putting us on the map. But, so that was how we got a foothold. It took about 2 years. And then it's been just this constant evolution and learning how to go from being thought of as only the silk invitation makers, because that became a label, to doing so much more than that and evolving outside of that. And I think it's very important for you to, I think any person in a creative field, to just constantly be innovating, because you will be left behind. And that's been really our tried and true approach and why we're still around.
I think that's an important thing to touch on, that you will be left behind, because, and you see this with every, I call them class of wedding professionals or event professionals, like the people who started out together and kind of hit success at the same time, and, sort of like a graduating class or group you go through school with. Mm-hmm. But you see this with every sort of class, that people who maybe find success earlier than they expect it to last forever. And they expect that level of press and money and conference invitations and all of that to last forever. And it doesn't. Mm. And one, overexposure is a real thing. But two, people move on, and, the Kool-Aid tastes great.
Right.
Like, people are telling you you're the best. How does that not taste great? And if you're drinking that Kool-Aid because it tastes so good, you are going to, I think, feel like you arrived. And I always say that when you arrived, you've settled, because there's always more to learn, more to grow, more to do, more to explore, more to push yourself.
And more people right behind you.
Right. Who are very talented. And especially with the advances in technology. I mean,
oh my gosh.
This iPhone 11 has this incredible camera on it. And it is this, there are entire films made by Hollywood directors who are big deals that they filmed on their iPhones. So it's not, they still obviously do most of their movies and stuff with the top of the line equipment, but things have caught up. It's not the grainy thing anymore. And that's just in the photography and videography category.
Oh my gosh.
But it's in every category. There's so much, and people are talented, and there is less barrier to entry now, but it is also more difficult to stand out.
Without question. When I think about, in 20 years, when I started, there were so few people doing what we were doing, and social media did not exist. And the only way you could be heard or seen was in a magazine. And to watch now where we are now, I can't even imagine entering into it now. It would take so much more to enter in, because the space is incredibly crowded. I remember, I think we've known each other, about 10 years at least?
At least, yeah.
Yeah. And I think when we sat down with you, my sister and I, when we sat down with you, one of the questions you asked us is like, who's your biggest competitor? And I remember back then, I think there were like 2 or 3 that were kind of like, on the map. And now I can honestly tell you there's probably 300. Because granted, what we do is still so unique and individual and all these things innovative, but there is a huge competition for attention. And that is what has really shifted, is that now there are 300 people getting your attention, and I'm trying to get your attention. And that has shifted dramatically. So competition is different, and how you have to respond and do that nimbly is so important. I think a lot about how we try to stay ahead of technology as well. When you were talking about how, now you can use your iPhone for filming a video or making a film. And there are apps now that you can use on your iPhone to create a very cute, graphically designed electronic save the date. So it's all affecting everyone. And now when you think about where we are specifically in the era of COVID and how technology is really allowing for events to continue to move forward, it's, I think, remaining nimble, remaining vigilant in terms of learning everything that's new and upcoming out there as much as you can, and just really staying innovative. Like you said, you can't rest on your laurels. You just simply can't.
Right. I can't remember, did you, and just for some context for people who might be newer to the industry who are watching this, back in the day, pre-2005, so not that long ago, but in terms of technology, a lifetime ago, it was, you either had to be referred by the highest end planners and catering managers to get those custom jobs, or you had to take a booth at the National Stationery Show and have an album of designs that the stationery retailers could sell in their stores. Did you ever have those albums?
We never did that. We've always been 100% custom from day one. And certainly there are choices you make, I think, as an entrepreneur. And I think they really need to be driven by what brings you genuine happiness. And I can tell you that Dori and I, my sister, who's my business partner and partner in crime, her and I have always purposely kept our company on the smaller side because we love what it affords us in our day-to-day life and the quality of life it brings us. And so at the time, we didn't necessarily want big albums to go into a bunch of stores to just become a printer of invitations. And so those business choices, I think, really, if you can, need to be driven by what your day-to-day existence wants to look like.
I do want to talk about that a little bit because you and I have talked about this before. And, one of the reasons I'm doing these Zoom conversations is because my job affords me the ability to have these honest conversations with people that other people don't get to have necessarily, and that Instagram and Facebook and TikTok don't show necessarily. It can be a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of, as our friend Marcy Boone calls it, compare and despair.
Oh, that's a great term.
I know several years ago, I feel like we were in LA talking about this, and you had a really big mindset shift of my life is good. Like, I don't need to compare myself to everyone else. And I've designed the life I want, and I need to be grateful for that. And like you said, you never did the album route, which was a very lucrative route until Etsy came along. And I know you started the hashtag as a personal Instagram project to be in love with your life. And you made one of your Valentine's, you do your mailings at Valentine's Day instead of the winter holidays.
Yeah.
And you made one of them centered around that, which I still have somewhere.
Oh,
but can you talk a little bit about that mindset shift of, hey, I purposefully created this life that I love and I'm not loving it, and I should love it. And it's really an attitude issue and not anything wrong with my life.
Oh my gosh, yes, 1,000%. It all started when I joined Instagram. And I don't even know how long I've been on Instagram now, but when I first started, I would say maybe a year into it, I just started feeling very sad and depressed about my lifestyle, thinking maybe the path I had chosen or the things I had decided to do, maybe they weren't the right ones. Maybe this wasn't what success looked like. Maybe success looks like what this person is doing and that person is doing. And it just kind of put me in this low place. Like my studio is based in the countryside of New Hampshire. I do not, at the time did not have any kind of New York physical presence by design. And it made me start questioning, should we move to New York? Should I, have a space? Like I started questioning so many things in my life. And it got to a point where I literally stopped using all social media for 1 month. I just went cold turkey and just stopped because that's the kind of effect it was having on me. And during that time, I remember I came across this quote by Jack Kerouac that said, "Be in love with your life every minute of it." And for whatever reason, in that moment, it just resonated. It just struck a chord. And I was just kind of looking around, at our home that we've designed to be a place that you want to escape to, at my office setup, at the fact that I do this with my family, all of those things were amazing. And I decided from that moment on, it was going to be in love with my life and not think I'm in love with someone else's. That's not the life I ever wanted to begin with. And Dori and I have had so many conversations since then, because you will get sucked back in from time to time. And it's good to sit down and remember why you chose the direction you chose, and to just if you embrace it and love it and own it and design your life the way you want to spend your days, it really helps manage those feelings of, competition is the thief of joy. You've heard that expression. And it's so true. Comparing does no good whatsoever.
Right.
So yeah, that was a big moment for me.
I think it's key too. You mentioned you took a break from all social media for a month. I think it's key that you took that month and figured out the root of the issue and didn't place all the blame on social media, because I know all of these apps and websites are designed to be addictive, and the double tapping gives a dopamine hit, and all that's been proven with behavioral psychology and all of that. But the thing I see is people thinking, I'll just stop this and everything will get better. But feeling like you're missing out on something better goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Like that has been an issue since the beginning of time. So if you don't take the time and be like, okay, this is, and I don't want to say like it was an issue with you, but you recognize that you're like, no, this is my mindset, my attitude. Social media is amplifying what's already happening inside me. So I need to fix this. And that breakaway, takes away that amplification. And then you can get down and solve the root issue of what is causing you to be unhappy with.
I think that's so true.
Dream life.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. And I think when you step away and you're no longer looking at what anyone else is doing, it allows you to really focus on what you're doing. By not knowing what anyone else was doing, it was almost a gift. It was like, this is wonderful. I can just focus on what I want to be working on. And I've definitely cut back on social media. I've turned off all notifications. I no longer get notifications anymore. I just check it when I feel like checking it. So there's little tricks, but especially now, oh my goodness, especially now, it's so important not to get caught up in what people are posting for perhaps the sake of looking, I don't know if busy is the right word, but just for the,
marketing.
Marketing, I mean, it's a tough balancing act for sure. But don't focus on what other people are posting or what they're doing. Everyone's trying to do everyone's trying to survive this in their own way. So don't compare. Right. Yeah.
Right. It's so important. And I feel like people tend to make decisions driven by FOMO, that fear of missing out. Whereas I always talk about JOMO, the joy of missing out, and taking a step back and thinking like, am I attending this event because it brings me business or because I'm afraid of what people will say if I'm not there? like, oh, her business must be down. She couldn't afford to come this year, like, or whatever. And I've heard that from people. And I do think, or I need to hit every networking event, or someone else may get the opportunity. And in some sense, that is true. But in the other sense, I do believe there is enough work for everyone. I know that is a very difficult statement to make, and maybe here this year in particular, because maybe this year the work isn't there. But in general, I do believe there is enough market share for everyone. And it's just a matter of positioning yourself and marketing yourself better. And, the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. And that comes down to marketing and positioning. And so I don't think people can just become hermits and not go to anything and then expect their business to like stay the way it is without doing some other type of networking and marketing, whether that's cold calling or one-on-one luncheons or whatever.
Right.
But I do think that, that's my train of thought. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, but you can't just, you can't be driven by FOMO. You need to be driven by like business goals and, and your own personal success story that you want to write. That's so important.
Right. And I think that's a big thing this year in particular that I'm hearing from people is their entire identity was tied up in their work. And that's dangerous all the time, but it's especially dangerous when the work evaporates, because then you don't know who you are apart from that. And you don't know what brings you joy, and you don't know how to sustain yourself mentally, self-care wise. And I'm not talking face masks and like home manicures, although those are great. I'm not against them. I have like 30 face masks in my bathroom. But, just that if you're always drawing your self-worth from work and then the work isn't there, you need to have something else that fills that well.
Right. Well, it's so interesting you bring that up, because I would say I have been that person who has really, I think, tied her identity, tied her self-worth to her work. I love to work. I love what I do. And so this time has been very interesting because it's allowed me to take a step back and say, okay, you don't have this now. So what is it? What's going to get you out of bed in the morning? What's going to excite you today? And what's been interesting is that I have remained super creative doing my own projects. And what it's taught me or made me understand is that I really, truly love what I do. I can't get enough of invention, creative invention. I just have to have that in my life almost every day. And so one thing we did when the pandemic first started and everything just literally stopped on a dime is I was being inspired by all of these collages I was seeing all over, my Instagram feed. And it was just kind of this fun little escape. And we were in the midst of, deciding to give our website a little facelift. And I decided, what, I love these collages, these dreamscapes, if you will. So I sat down for about 6 weeks and designed all these fun collages featuring our invitations, but putting them in kind of this fantastical setting. And it just brought me so much joy. And it was just so fun to do. So it has been an interesting time in terms of learning a little bit about myself and feeling good that I did choose the right path in life because it's something that I really love. But, understanding what it means when that's taken away from you and how you still find ways to do what you love or find maybe some new things too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What are some of the ways that what does your self-care look like these days? You mentioned the collages and the dreamscapes, but other than that, like, what are you doing to stay sane?
Yes,
basically?
exactly. Sleep has been a big part of my, I love sleep. I've always needed 8 to 9 hours, and now I get a solid 9+. And I don't like, I guess the number one rule I've told myself is don't judge yourself. If you want to get up at 10 o'clock in the morning, get up at 10 o'clock in the morning right now. If you want to, basically, if just don't judge yourself based on what you need in the moment. For example, on my birthday, which was in August, I decided I was just going to spend the day with myself. And I left the property, our home, and I went to the ocean, and I went to a garden, and I went to a marina, and I was just outside doing whatever I felt like doing, drove wherever I wanted to drive, just did whatever moved me in the moment. And I decided and made a vow to myself that I will do that every year on my birthday moving forward. I will gift myself this day of just pure joy, be it whatever it looks like. I don't care if we're in the middle of a giant project, like this is going to be my gift to myself. So I guess, a long-winded way of saying, just do what you need in the moment to give yourself a bit of joy. Self-care to me is so important about just kind of cutting yourself a break and not applying so much pressure on yourself to maybe be doing something you think you should be doing right now, or maybe what you think somebody else is doing right now. Again, that goes back to, stop comparing. And when you wake up in the morning, do what you need in that moment. If it means you want to do a yoga class, do it. If it means you want to sleep an extra hour, do it. If you want to eat a brownie, have it. Do things that give you little bits of joy throughout the day so that you can tackle, that day and then get on to the next one. So don't be too tough on yourself. Don't be too tough on yourself.
Right. I think the saying one day at a time applies in 2020 more than maybe any other year.
Yes.
And I do think that, I know you use Twitter as well. And so I'm sure you saw all the memes that were going around at the beginning of this, making fun of the guy who basically said, like, if you're not getting your third PhD and writing a book and finishing your script and, whatever, then like you wasted this opportunity. Like, okay, if you're not giving other people COVID, if you're not catching it and spreading it to other people, you're being productive.
Big win. Yes.
If you're surviving, you're being productive. If you got your kids sat down in front of the computer for their Zoom school and like they were dressed from the top up, you're being productive. Like that is what matters right now. It's not about being this perfect person or just this. I think sometimes, especially in our society, we can turn productivity, which is a very useful tool and can be a great benchmark, we turn it into an idol. And the pressure of like, you need to accomplish all these things because you have so much more time. Well, first of all, not everyone has more time right now, especially if all your kids are home and your spouse is home. And you're like, I had a routine that I liked. And it did not involve you guys during the day. And it was quiet and I could listen to my music. And this is when I ate lunch and no one came barging in while I'm in a meeting on Zoom. Like I was doing fine. Like when you guys saw you off in the morning, you guys left for work and school and I went to my office and sat down. And now you guys are in my office.
All day. Yeah.
These rules because I was here first. So I think it's, like there's so much going on right now. And especially, again, for people with kids, you're helping these little human beings process something that you're not even able to process right now.
Oh, so
and
true.
They don't have any sort of reference or life experience to help them cope with that. They haven't been to therapy. They haven't learned the coping mechanisms.
Right.
So it's a lot. And I think if you are just, like you said, getting up an hour later if you need to, or even watching more TV than you might just to give your brain a break, or taking more breaks from the news than you usually do, or whatever it might be, self-care is going to look different for everyone. And if everyone in your house is in one piece at the end of the day, I think that's being productive.
That's a win. Yes, I agree. 1,000%. Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yeah, I think we can't beat ourselves up. We can't set standards and rules and a list of accomplishments. I mean, if that's who you are, great. If it's not who you are, great. Do you. Just do you right now. Yeah.
Did you make your earrings?
No, but I should have, because they look just like one of my chargers.
Yeah.
And I wear them all the time for that reason.
I'm like, did she buy those because they look like the chargers, or did she make them? That's your pivot for 2020.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Totally.
Red Bliss jewelry.
No kidding. Oh, funny.
A few years ago, you started working with a material that you guys have named Chroma. And so far, it is still proprietary to you. No one else has quite figured out how you've done it, and you won't tell them, which is smart. Exactly. And you ended up launching a separate line with it, with the chargers, not just using it in invitation pieces. You've started renting them, but you also started selling them through retail. And you had some pretty big contracts with Neiman Marcus, and you were in Barney's and
Bergdorf's. Yep.
Bergdorf's. And some of that ran into some issues. And then you also had an issue with being knocked off by a giant nationwide company. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you've navigated that a little bit? Because I do think, unfortunately, when people get desperate, they tend to let the fear override their better judgment. And so I think people are going to be dealing with getting knocked off a lot more in the next couple of years, because everyone's just trying to make it right now. And so having already been through that experience, can you talk a little bit about how that felt and how you handled it and all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing about the chargers and this home line that we developed is it came out of a moment, I think it was 2008 roughly, where it was quiet. I think it was in April. We did not have a lot of work at the time, and it was kind of this quiet period. And so it allowed us some free time to innovate. And I wanted to find a way that we could leverage this unique material that we had, but not necessarily increase staff, increase a lot of overhead. So the beautiful thing is we already had the material, we already had our fabricator, we just had to design it and cut it, and voila. So that was the beauty of creating it. Essentially, the idea was to create another revenue stream without having to invest hardly anything into it. And if there's ever been a time to do that, it's now. Thinking about trying, is there other things we could be doing that leverages the knowledge or the products we have without necessarily adding to the cost? So we went down that path. And when we first launched it, we decided it was going to be a home collection, sold retail. I remember going to New York with all my samples and meeting with all my high-end clients. And every single one of them was like, I am buying this, I want this, I need this. It was extraordinary. And then someone that I know made us an introduction into Gracious Home in New York City, and first store we had ever talked to, and they brought our product on. And then because of them, we got into Bergdorf's, and because of them, we got into Neiman Marcus. So we had never been in retail in that way before. Gracious Home, after 4 months, went bankrupt. We never got paid, and that sucked. And then, but we were in Bergdorf's, and that was amazing. Bergdorf's, when you are in the Neiman Marcus family, you are also part of then their entire system, and you have to pay to be in their system. You have to be part of the EDI exchange. You have to have GS1 codes for all of your products. You have to have all these things, and they all cost money. Everything's a subscription that you have to pay so much money every year to have. And there's maintenance and all of these things. And by the time all of those costs were added on to the product, I mean, we made no money, essentially. But I got to say we were in Bergdorf's, and that made me very happy. But that does not build a big business. So retail, we discovered, is hard, and it's really hard to make a profit. And we also knew we did not want to go to the gift show and be in a booth and sell a bunch of chargers to a bunch of tiny mom and we just didn't have the resources to do that. And again, like I've always said, Dori and I enjoy the size of our company. So at the time, I had started having, Preston Bailey was the first one, reached out and saw the chargers and had a 250 person wedding in Florida. And he goes, I need these for my wedding. And I'm like, you shall have them. And that's when it clicked. And I said, why are we chasing a whole new market? Why are we not going after our current base of clients and people we work with every day in the events industry? And that's when we decided to start renting them. Never in a gajillion years did I think we would ever become some kind of rental company. But the demand was there and people got very excited about it. And once that started happening, that's when we were approached by a very big name company who was very intrigued and, had basically floated the idea of us, of them bringing our product on board. I flew out to their offices. I met with their head team. We got into negotiations, and then all of a sudden they just ghosted me. And sure enough, 3 or 4 months later, they rolled out their own version. One of the products is literally a ripoff of one of our designs.
I saw it. It's exactly a ripoff.
Exactly. And we sent a cease and desist letter and we did all these things and nobody cared. And they're a huge company. And, it's really deflating and demoralizing and all the things that go with that. Sure, we were proud and excited that so many people were embracing and loving this whole concept that we had come up with. I mean, back in 2008, I don't believe chargers, the way we designed them, existed. So I feel like, again, as, an innovator, we launched this kind of new category, in the event industry of creating very custom, unique, flat chargers. And now, of course, you've seen a number of people roll out their own versions and their own designs, and it's all very wonderful. But it was hard. It was hard to watch your product stolen from you. And then we've also seen it stolen. A company in India was manufacturing it, and now other people, it's a tough pill to swallow. And I don't know, would I have changed it or done anything differently? No, because I loved creating that collection. It brought me so much joy. I love that we were the first to market. They've always said, never be the first to market, always be a fast follower. I've always learned that. But I can't help it. I love coming up with things that have never been done.
But if you're going to be a trendsetter, that rule doesn't apply.
That doesn't apply. So you choose, right? You choose. Right. And the creative has always brought me so much joy. So I guess, proceeding, so knowing those lessons about the retail environment, what it really costs to be in retail, what it can mean to you in terms of bankruptcies. Neiman Marcus just filed for bankruptcy and they owed us a little bit of money. Not as much as the other company, but I really got a sense of what bankruptcy looks like for the little guy who's, providing the product that keeps the store open. It's not nice. It's not nice.
I think that's something that people misunderstand about business bankruptcy, especially in the US, and the different types of bankruptcy you can file. And for a lot of companies, it is a strategic financial decision to keep them from accumulating debts while they restructure. So it happens a lot with hotels. Baha Mar did it. A lot of hotels use this strategy a lot. And a lot of big retailers do it, which is why you see them declare bankruptcy and everyone's like, oh no, I'm going to miss them. It's like, oh, they're not going anywhere. Right. They're just restructuring internally. And now they don't have to pay a small 4-person company like yours.
Exactly.
And legally, they're off the hook for that debt because of that. And that, I mean, that's a whole separate conversation with our tax system and financial system and all the flaws with it, and who it actually protects and who it doesn't.
Right.
But small businesses usually are the ones who suffer the most from that. It is some of the, people get laid off, and like restructuring usually means layoff. So there is fallout at the bigger companies, but they usually don't go under forever. It's just a way of hitting pause, a legal way of hitting pause for them. Exactly. And it's hard. It's really hard, especially for people in the industry. And I know a lot of in bridal fashion companies get hit with that a lot because these big retailers use that strategy. Yeah. And then all these dress designers and manufacturers and their entire supply chain is left in the lurch holding the bill.
Yeah, it's really rough. It's really rough. And I would always encourage people to, if you have something that is new to market and is an innovation, and, I absolutely always encourage inventing that and launching that and running with that. That should never, these things that I talk about, copycats and stuff, it should never deter you. I mean, I will say last week, my sister found a company in Turkey that has literally copied almost every invitation on our website and redesigned for people in Turkey, and has it all over their social media, all over their website. I mean, it's the anger that fueled in me that day was beyond words. But you can't stop creating.
I don't sell a product. I sell basically my brain. Yep. But still, I spoke in an event in Cartagena last year, which I loved. I love that. And one of the other speakers from there, I don't think she knew I was going to be there, but she had copied my part of my bio as her own. And the conference producers noticed it and like deleted it, but I saw, and I don't know if she ever made the connection because my name is spelled differently than it's pronounced. So I introduced myself as Lynn, and she's probably thinking it's Leanne.
Of course.
But I've had that happen a couple times. Like people take parts of your bio, and I'm like, oh, you had a weird career path too? How interesting.
Right. Fascinating.
You did crisis management too? Interesting.
Right. I mean, I think that's one thing, when you think about 20 years ago when I started, they're just, people had maybe small websites, but now so much gets circulated through Pinterest and all these vehicles. And, I mean, to see so much of our work literally copied verbatim and just names changed and some of the materials changed. Because again, they're trying to figure out what chroma is, but they don't know. It's really difficult. And when you mentioned that, we might be seeing more of this to come because of the circumstances, that's a tough one.
I do. I think some of the unfortunate things we're going to see as, again, people just trying to survive and not letting their better judgment prevail. And all of us make mistakes. And I don't know that this would fall in the mistake category. But I think we're going to see a lot of the copycats, and we're going to see a lot of venues and planners trying to charge commissions or charge higher commissions. And they're going to see a lot more pushback than usual from people on that, because people are making up lost revenue and they don't want to pay it. And now, a couple's not necessarily going to the planner as their first hire anymore, especially with Instagram.
Yeah.
And being able to source vendors that way. And so I think people should be prepared for those conversations and have an idea of how they're going to handle it if they do get approached about that stuff, or if they do see their stuff being knocked off. Because, and again, this varies country to country, but in the US with trademarks, if someone copies, like uses your company name or your tagline or whatever piece of material you have trademarked, if you don't go send a cease and desist to like the small nobody who took it, who's like in a town of 100 people in the middle of nowhere, Texas, than if someone big took it, like a Neiman Marcus or a Nordstrom, and you go and try and sue them and take it to court, the judge is going to say, well, you didn't protect your trademark for all these other people, so you didn't care about it then, so you don't actually care about it now. And so you do have to stay on top of that just to protect yourself. And it's so much. And I think we're going to see, unfortunately, more of that kind of tedious admin work that no one wants to think about in the next couple of years, because again, desperate times call for desperate measures, and people don't always make the best decisions during those times.
Right. When we came out with our charger collection, I had a woman in the UK who just decided she was going to reproduce them exactly as we designed them. And, it's just stunning to me. Like, I can understand people wanting to launch placemats or chargers, be my guest, but to literally just copy you verbatim is mind blowing. So anyway, I reached out to, obviously cease and desist and all the things, but I also reached out to Instagram and Facebook where all these images had been posted. And I specifically laid out my case that these photos need to be removed. And they removed them, which is amazing. But it's a lot of busy work to keep up with all of it, for sure.
It's a lot of busy work, and you have to have your facts straight and come correct when you approach those companies like Instagram and Facebook and all of that, because there are internet laws in the US that protect you, but there are also a lot of loopholes. So you have to be, again, on it, very organized, and lay it out. And you don't necessarily need to have a patent filed for the design, but you still, it's a lot to think about. It is.
Yeah. And, I've always wondered, like, what's your take on this? So many people, especially in our industry, when you see a copycat, we all just kind of like, many of us just kind of shut up and move on, and we all just kind of roll our eyes and say, just keep plugging away. And it's frustrating. Like, I wish there was a way to hold, the bad doers more accountable, and it's almost like it's more shameful if I say something or call somebody out than it is for the person who actually committed the reproduction.
Yeah. My take is that it varies case by case. And I don't get knocked off for specific products, but I do get knocked off for the weirdest things. Like, several years ago, someone sent me a YouTube link of someone I considered a friend giving a talk at a conference, and it wasn't in the hospitality or event industry. And they were giving one of my talks that I had done at Engage, and they somehow got access to my slides. They like my same jokes, and like, my jokes are very me and my sense of humor. Like, they're not stolen from anyone. Like, they're just very, half the room laughs and half doesn't get it because I have that dry sense of humor. But, like, it's just, I was like, whoa. And I don't think they knew it was being filmed. And I don't think they knew because it was outside of the overlap of weddings and events and hospitality. I don't think they knew anyone would ever find out. And I was really hurt by that because it was someone I considered a friend. That conference is obviously where they saw it. It's the only place, all my talks are custom for the audience. Right. And like,
exactly,
slides are sometimes illustrated with people in the audience. Like, Christy Rice has done several where she sketched out and watercolored people for me for my slides.
So great. Yeah.
And, it's hurtful, but also it wasn't a nobody. And what's it going to do if I publicly name and shame? Like, it just, they are a good speaker. They usually, I think, have smart things to say. Now, I'm not sure if those smart things came from them, but they usually have smart things to say. And it's hard. And I think it's a little bit of, I'm not going to sue them. I don't know that I would even have a case.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, what it would be small claims court. Like,
Right.
It's not someone who hired them instead of me. Like, it's a total industry I don't even target and want no part of.
Yeah.
But it was just weird and hurtful, and I made the decision to let them save face. And I think that sometimes that's the way to go. Same with the gal who copied my bio. I just never told her, and just, I don't know if it ever, like, that light bulb went off of like, oh, that was her.
Right.
You know, because she's thinking she's in a different continent, and like, it's not. And I don't think she made the connection that we were the same person. And, but sometimes I do think you have to, well, one, legally, sometimes you do have to protect it, like with the trademarks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then other times, I think you have to think about, like, what do I want to come out of this? Like, just to embarrass them?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to embarrass them. Like, I've made decisions before under stress that in retrospect, I'm like, oh, I should have handled that differently. And I don't know if that's the case in this situation. Like, they were stressed and maybe something had happened in their life and they didn't prepare, and they knew that talk had been well received and just decided to copy it, which was the wrong decision. But I don't know what led to it, and I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying I don't get anything out of putting them on blast online.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get financial benefit out of that. I don't get emotional benefit out of that. Like, maybe you feel like you're meting out some sort of justice, but you're really not. I don't know. So I do think it's case by case, but I think sometimes just letting people save face and taking them off your referral list, because that's the thing. I have a personal rule that if I get an inquiry and I either can't take it because I'm already booked, or that doesn't apply to this year. If I get inquiries, I'm taking them all. But if I'm already booked, or they're not a good fit, or I just know that what they want isn't something that I necessarily want to do, I have a personal rule that I will refer them to someone else. And I don't check with that person to see if they have the date open, or like for a speaking engagement or whatever, or if they even want to do that type of consulting work. I let them make that decision, but I say, reach out to so-and-so or so-and-so. They're also very talented in this. And because I do think that since the industry is saturated, and business to business consulting is also very saturated now. And I do think that you do best when you compete with people who are good at what they do. And in order to compete with the people who are good at what they do and not let the charlatans BS their way to the top, is to send the business you can't take to your good competitors. So I have this rule about, I will always give a referral. If we're not a good fit for you, I will try and refer someone who is. So, that person doesn't get referred anymore by me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so two things to that. First of all, I mean, the one thing I do is when I see a knockoff, is I always reach out and, I don't know if confront is the right word, but I always reach out and indicate, I've seen this. I know this is being done. I am kindly asking you to cease and desist immediately. And some do and some don't, but at least I've always confronted every situation that I've encountered. And then to your point about referral and, your competition and staying in the circle that you want to that you feel your work is comparable to, one thing that has kind of come out of this time period is a connection to peers of mine in the stationery industry that has been, really nice, staying in touch with them, talking to them, in an honest way about what's happening. I had, someone come out to my home and we just had the loveliest conversation. I'm some friends out in San Francisco. Like, it's so important to, they're all competitors, but we're all so respectful of what we all do and what we're all aiming for. And it's just a really nice support group. And if I would encourage that so much rather than, you know, I've seen the phrase, you know, community over competition, and it's true. It's true. It really is beneficial in so many ways.
The last question I end all of these with is, what are you most looking forward to when the most painful parts of this have passed?
Right. Without question, seeing my parents. They live in Minnesota, and have not been able to see them all year. They were supposed to come out in April. That didn't happen. Christmas, don't think that's going to happen. So seeing them is absolutely my most important thing. And many friends as well. And from a business standpoint, you know, I think what has brought me, like, this past week has been the first week in many, many weeks that we've actually seen the phone ringing again, and some fun projects being discussed, and things obviously for 2021 are cooking. And it feels good to, I mean, I get giddy, like I get excited when the phone rings and there's a new project. And so I guess I'm just looking forward to getting back to creating and innovating cool, like just really cool stuff. And that I can't wait to do more of that.